Welcome everyone, this is another episode with myself and Adam over there, and today we're going to talk about a Godzilla movie. Not Godzilla x Kong in the underworld of whatever that was that we got to watch.
Did you watch that?
I deliberately watched it so that I could make a comparison to Godzilla -1.
It's awful.
Say no more, say no more. Yeah, it definitely is. So today we're here to talk about the actual Japanese one. Adam, before we start, I would like to get some controversy out of the way regarding this movie. I don't know if you had heard of this. Yeah, and I don't mean the budget, I mean cultural controversy.
I've not heard about that. Okay, but go on.
Okay, maybe we can go into this a lot deeper as well when we talk about the movie, but in Asia, this movie was received differently. So while in the West, people were talking about the budget and the special effects and the acting, because people here obviously are a different mindset, people can still feel bitter about what the Japanese did to Hong Kong. The Japanese invaded Hong Kong and the whole World War II, it lingers a little bit. But what I looked at on the Wikipedia page, in South Korea, this was sort of more negatively received because of the idea of glorifying kamikaze pilots, and that's obviously something sensitive to them because they're fighting the war, and we didn't to begin with. I never actually thought that this movie was glorifying kamikaze pilots, and again we can get into that. So there's a difference of opinion with how the Easterners and the Westerners looked at this. There's like some nuanced things there, and I was trying to argue that these are the civilians for the most part, except for our main character, and they felt betrayed by their government as well. That's probably one reason why they limit the government's role in this movie. I just wanted to clear that now because I'm going to put this video on my Hong Kong channel, and I want to make it relevant as well for any Hong Kong listeners.
I mean, I don't know much about that culture side of things. All I got was the kamikaze pilots and stuff like that. It was like honourable to do such a thing, and so if you didn't, then it was like dishonourable, and that's all I got out of it. I didn't think it was like trying to glorify it or anything like that. It was just a product of that time period as well, and that's how people thought, and that's how they thought about it, and that's how they viewed that, especially in a time of war, in a time of like that sort of stuff.
I think because us two weren't personally affected by the war, we can sort of like take a step back and look at it in probably a more objective way, whereas South Koreans and the Hong Kong people, I mean, I only have Ray's opinion as a Hong Kong person, but the South Koreans especially have expressed, I don't want to say they've misunderstood, but clearly they see it another way because of the way the movie is depicting kamikaze pilots, and they think they've taken it as, well, they're glorifying it, even though the main character decides to, spoilers, he doesn't decide to kill himself.
Yeah.
And even if he does kill himself, it's like a personal glory, which I ultimately think would be misguided anyway, because Japanese pilots were told to do that and told to believe in the emperor. So they're as much, I would say, again, because I'm Westerner, I would say they're as much of a victim as other countries who received their payloads, because they were indoctrinated and forced to waste their life on something that they knew they wouldn't win.
They were just like cannon fodder.
Yeah, treated as such. And you can see in the beginning of the movie, those engineers are disappointed in him for not killing himself.
Yeah.
So... It's very complicated, but I just wanted to throw that out there now and just get some cultural perspective on this movie that is not from the Westerners' viewpoint. That's the heavy stuff out of the way. I want to ask you a very light-hearted question. Do you see Godzilla -1 as a sequel to Oppenheimer?
No.
Do you know why it's called Godzilla -1?
It's something to do with the actual kaiju itself, I think, or it's like an event or something. It's not an event. It's event orientated or something.
Basically, Japan was at zero. That was their lowest point. So the introduction of Godzilla takes it below zero because it's even worse than thought humanly possible. So that's why it's called -1. I've seen a lot of people talk about it and they get it wrong. So I want to again clarify that as well for people. Anyway, what did you think of the movie?
Yeah, finally. I thought it was really good. I think I watched it in the wrong way though. So I watched it with the English subs on when I've been sort of reading up where you should watch it not dubbed. You should watch it just with the subtitles and stuff.
I watched it with subs.
So, yeah, I wish I'd have watched it with subs, but I'll probably get a second playthrough and watch it again without. But it was a really good movie. It depicts Godzilla in a different light. Obviously, he's not, like, fighting for balance and all that stuff. He's not fighting for, like, us or anything like that. He doesn't really have a purpose except for coming out of the ocean and smashing stuff. And, that's all it needs to be. It just needs to be that sort of thing. I like the characterizations in this. There's lots of different characters that you can get behind and actually care about in the movie while you're watching it. it. So they did a good job at highlighting all these different characters in the movie and making you care about them, which is something that isn't typically done in past Godzilla movies, which I found quite refreshing whilst watching it.
I watched it a second time and I almost cried as well at certain scenes a second time. It made me think while I was watching the movie, when they have these summer blockbusters, apart from Oppenheimer, why is it that people, it's okay to say, the reviewers will say, it's turn your brain off fun? It really struck me with this movie because I'm thinking, no, why should I even accept that idea of a movie to allow me to turn my brain off just to accept
I don't think this is a turn your brain off fun.
No, but I mean this, sorry, let me rephrase it, because this is such good quality.
Yeah.
And it's not a complicated story. Why are we allowed to celebrate sort of more mediocre films and just say, just turn your brain off? That's what I mean.
I feel like with that sort of comment, because we've had so much trash as of recent memory, some movies can get away with being sort of a throwaway sort of like fun time movie where you can switch off your brain and enjoy it for what it is. Godzilla versus Kong or whatever was meant to be that, and I went in that with that mindset, and it didn't work because it was that terrible. So it wasn't even good in that respect. It was just terrible all around. Whereas I think the comment that people make, right, you can turn around, you can have a fun time movie and switch your brain off. Some movies you can get away with that. Like some are good, some are that sort of thing. But I think it's used, the terminology is used more because there's a lot of trash films out there now.
That's true. As a point of comparison, let's say Die Hard 2. I know this is a random tangent. Die Hard 2 is just a simple action movie, but I would never turn my brain off for it because it's actually a really good action movie.
Yeah.
There's a nuance there where they're putting their effort into it and it's just an action movie, whereas Godzilla vs. Kong, it's just an event. It's supposed to be an event movie, but you're told to turn your brain off and then you're still like,
Yeah.
I can't believe you have an actual story. You have great music. You have realistic human characters, probably for the first time in the last, since Godzilla with Jamiroquai doing the soundtrack. Remember back in the 90s?
Matthew Broderick and Deeper Underground.
And
hit the theme.
This is probably the best movie since that American movie as well, which is not really a high bar to fucking clear. No. And just for the record, I only have a vague recollection of the classic Godzilla movies, so I can't compare them to that. Sorry guys if you're looking for something of an in-depth analysis comparison to those movies, but I don't know.
I don't know either. Like, okay. I have no idea. My basis is Godzilla, the Matthew Broderick one, and then the recent one they did with Bryan Cranston, which they actually tried to do the characterizations a little bit at the beginning of the movie, but then for some reason it felt like there was two different people writing that movie in particular, because it starts out one way and then goes a completely different direction when Bryan Cranston's character dies. So it's really odd. What a strange movie that is.
The director, he's the one who did Deus Ex Machina. I can't remember his name. I think he's a British director, and he did that one that was last year with the spaceship that can like nuke people from orbit, and you've got the robot kid that has to dismantle it. Right, another low budget, pretty decent movie. Can't remember his name, but I remember his work. It does say something interesting though about how the worst part of the American version of these movies is the best part of the Japanese versions. And that's not even to say the fight scenes with Godzilla are also the best parts of the movie.
Godzilla as a character in this movie is just, he doesn't need to be much, he just needs to come in and destroy things. And he's like a little bit of a reminder to these people that like they've just come out of a world war and stuff like that, and they've just come out that hole, the bomb thing falling and all that, dealing with all that. And then the bomb thing, JJ, Hiroshima. Come on, man. Let's get going, man.
You're so insensitive. Clearly, it didn't personally affect you.
What do you want me to do? Cry right now about it?
No.
It happened. I'm stating that it happened.
No, it's the way you said it, like the bomb thing, when you could have just said, the Japanese got nuked.
Well, that's a bit less insensitive. My thing's insensitive. Oh, they got nuked. That's much better. Than the bomb thing.
Yeah, but at least it's true. You're just like, the bomb thing. It's like you're dismissing
the bomb thing. You're like, they got nuked. That's much better. It's much better.
It's more realistic.
Fucking hell.
Fuck, we're going to get in trouble for this one.
Where was I? Where was I going with this?
Talking about bomb thingies.
Like, Godzilla, he's like, I don't know, a euphemism for like war being on those people's doorsteps all the time and just coming in and just smashing shit. So they're just never that too far away from that sort of event. And you always felt like his presence, like the way he moved methodically, the way he brought up like the concrete on the ground. It was just slow movement, and it was more effective than the crap you see in the modern day stuff where he's running around like it doesn't make any sense, where he's so agile in the Western type movies.
No, I totally agree. The perspective matters, and actually one of the criticisms of the Kong movie, Godzilla versus Kong, whatever, the second one,
Yeah.
was the perspective to use Godzilla's perspective wasn't there, whereas here they use it. Another name
Yeah.
for bomb thingies could be Oppenheimer's candy.
Yeah, it's much more sensitive. Let's go.
So Oppenheimer drops some candy. Let's go through this movie in some sort of semblance of order. The movie begins with that plane landing. Did you notice, by the way, that the character, what's his name? Because I've got his name here, and I did send you a list of names.
You did send me a list of names, yeah.
Because we wanted to do it properly, but the character's name is Koichi. I can't say the character's name, the actor's name. So
We are going to
Koichi.
butcher characters' names if we try and say the names.
Did you notice though that you don't actually see him fly a plane till the end? When I watched it on the second attempt, the second run through, he doesn't fly the plane, and I thought that was a really interesting detail because you can get into the idea that he isn't really a pilot until the end of the movie, which he isn't. In their eyes, as a kamikaze pilot, right? He's not living to the fullest extent of a pilot in their culture. So the movie's on Odo Island. They give you a Godzilla in the beginning, in the first 10 minutes, and normally,
Yeah, good opener.
yeah, and normally when you do that in a movie. Do you remember that Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Nicole Kidman? They show you one of the guys getting all like reconfigured, and it ruins the sort of setting where she might think everyone's going crazy because you know what happens. So it's like, for people who don't have patience, we're going to throw this scene in. This scene, you can say it does that, but at the same time, it gives you a little tease, and then you realise why it's bigger later on because it sets that up.
It establishes him as a character as well, like a threat as well. And like you say, the scale has changed much more later on.
Did you notice that the fight scene on Odo Island, it's a one shot?
I didn't know.
That's what happens when you watch it twice.
By the way, he looks fantastic. Like the Godzilla, he just looks threatening. He looks fantastic, imposing. Facial features, his eyes in particular. Oh wow, it's just everything's great about the design.
It's all in the eyes for me.
Damn right.
When he's chasing the boat, the eyes are locked on. It's like, okay, you've made this more real.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're like looking at it, you're looking at like what they're looking at, and you're like, oh my god, he's pissed and he's coming for me.
If you go and watch the other Godzilla movies, and I don't suggest you do, they do always have a close-up of the eyes, and the close-up is always, I get the idea that they want to say that this thing's alive, this thing understands what the humans want, and so there's a connection. But this creates a different kind of connection where you know it's alive, but it also wants to make you unalive.
Yeah, like he's doing that as well. Like it's emoting that aggression towards the characters that it's chasing. It's great.
It is. Okay, so after Odo Island, Koichi goes back home, and not only is he shamed from not dropping himself into an American naval warship, but when he drops himself back into Tokyo, his neighbor isn't too happy, is she?
It's a shithole, by the way. Everything's just flat.
Something that we don't normally see as Westerners with regards to the way the Japanese were damaged after the war. Especially, I think Tokyo was firebombed, which is kind of crazy because that also killed like thousands of people. So he gets more shame piled on him. And this movie reminds me of Dumbo, where Dumbo is just like, he gets more shit put on him by the end of the movie, then he can fly away, and it's like a happy ending. This one sort of like follows the same premise. Not saying it's copying Dumbo, but it's an established method for creating the tension and the character's arc that he has to accomplish by the end of the movie. But his parents are dead.
Yep.
The neighbor's pissed. Her children are dead. She's not happy that he didn't off himself as well. Like, can you imagine?
Well, that would make a difference.
Right, but in a Western movie, when the soldiers come back home, they're like, "Oh, you lost your brother in the war, and thank you for saving us and shit." And in Japan, they're like, "You didn't kill yourself?" Like the neighbors, like, random neighbors.
Why are you here?
Right. And then that means you didn't do your job properly. But in America, if you or in the UK, if you came home, then you did do your job properly.
Yeah, you get a round of applause. Well done, you're alive. You survived.
It's some heavy shit.
And then to top all that off, he loses a family, but then he inherits a family. So it's all at once.
He gets the cutest girl I've ever seen. You know, I was reading the production notes, and the director said, because he was asked, "How did you get that girl to cry? How did you get her?" I was gonna
say. I was like watching it, thinking, "They are cracking that kid."
Well. He actually said, "I found a genius. The girl did it on command." And I work with kids, and I know when a kid is fake crying. I know she's still faking it, but it's so authentic.
She looked so upset. I felt like they were like either yanking her hair or like nipping her or something. That's what I thought, because it was so real. Yeah. Like the tears, the emotion, it was like.
So did you watch the end of the credits where it said no children were harmed in the production of this movie? I didn't see that disclaimer, by the way, so you could be right.
Oh my god.
I remember the scenes with the little girl, for sure. Her posture, the crying, the eyes, the tears, the questions that she asks. I'm like, whew, I felt hot watching her. So she's a standout. With regards to the two main actors, so you've got Koichi, and then you've got Horito, I think? Yeah, Noriko.
Okay, yeah.
Who's, I guess, would eventually become his wife in some distant future. Those two actors played similar roles in a TV series called Ranman, which is on a Japanese channel. There was some criticism to their portrayals because they were just playing what they're capable of doing, but the director deliberately hired them for their sort of drama series emoting.
Okay.
Yeah, he didn't want like an action star or anything. He wanted like normal looking people, so he picked two people from a drama series that I guess just have relationship drama.
That makes sense. He gets a job. He's disarming old World War II sort of mines, isn't he, in the sea?
Yeah, in the rickiest boat ever.
Yeah, and that's where we meet the rest of the ensemble of characters that we get to sort of connect with. They all have their own personalities, which is good. They're not all like bland and the same. Like you get to see in like Western movies where you get army characters and then you get some civilian characters. These guys all have their own personalities and it's really good. And they all bounce off each other really well.
Do you remember we were talking about another Godzilla movie where the characters would finish each other's sentence as though they're all telepathic to create the drama, whereas these characters actually have real conversations, and it pushes the conversation forward. So you've got the young guy who never served in the war, Koichi, is like, you don't want to fight in it, and that creates his arc because he does get involved later. Then you've got the grizzled veteran who has seen war, doesn't want, and he wants to teach the young one and Koichi, because Koichi's still young as well, about you can change your mind. And then you've got the crazy scientist who at first I thought, okay, he's just on a boat, he's leading this effort at the end, he's like, he jumped ahead in status. Okay, this is a weird turn, but I'll go with it.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's that they've all got simple sort of characteristics, but then sometimes like having a straightforward thing like that is better than overcomplicating the script. So having like some people, they'd look at that and go, oh, it's kind of stereotypical characterizations of each of them. But sometimes that works better and it serves the story a lot better. And it did in this case anyway, because you felt more of a connection with these characters straight away. You knew who each one of them were and what their motivations were, what motivated them, and it just worked better.
And every character is required. There's no fluff to the characters. There is some fluff to the way they present themselves, like the way they overact, which is typical for Japanese actors, which I guess is something culturally endemic to how they process emotions. And I'm like, okay, there's a lot of screaming and there's a lot of shouting that just seems over-dramatized, but that's a Japanese movie for you. It doesn't tip me out too much.
I'm sort of used to that, but obviously I come off the heels of watching stuff like Squid Game. Typically, straight away, they have the same sort of thing where they're sort of over-emoting and shouting at each other. Yeah. It's the same similar sort of thing, like you say. It must be that style of acting or that sort of cultural differences between...
It's as though... because you said Korean as well, so it's almost as though Asian countries know that they're competing for your attention because you're either on the iPhone having conversation. So if they do something overly bombastic and dramatic, everyone's back to looking at the main TV screen again. Huh? What happened? I remember one significant screen from Koichi, and that's where Godzilla's like admiring his handiwork at the atomic cloud that he's just created, the facsimile of an Oppenheimer candy, and the black rain starts falling on him, and he keeps screaming and screaming and screaming. It gets louder and louder, and I'm thinking, I wonder how many times he practiced that. That's a one shot. You got to do that in one take because of what's falling out of the sky. You can't mock that up. So I wonder if they did have one take, but he practiced it 100 times over there, and they just threw, I don't know, confetti on him or something to like simulate what's going to happen. Because when the black rain falls on him, he doesn't react to the black rain. He's just focused, like laser focus on Godzilla. Doesn't give a shit. He's getting spat on by the debris of like his city and other people because they get stomped.
Oh yeah, people get annihilated in this.
In American movies, they don't like show you the death; it's just implied. But here, people get trampled on, or he whacks his tail against a building, and they just get splattered with bricks.
Yeah, exactly. Like you see the real sense of destruction and loss of human life. It's actually a real life watching, like a real life world event, isn't it? Like a tornado or a tsunami or
Yeah.
something like that. It's like watching that sort of thing where real casualties and real damage is being done. Whereas like in an American movie, it's inconsequential almost. It's like, well, so what? He's tramping through a whole city. Who cares?
And the people, again, I've watched it twice. I am deliberately looking at people in the background and what they're doing. And people have different reactions to what, obviously, there's not a lot of shots because they're trying to save money of people looking at Godzilla and Godzilla's on screen at the same time. So there's a couple of shots where you're just looking at the Japanese people. And some of them are like, huh? Some of them are running away. Some of them are clutching their items. They're all just doing different little things that make it more believable. Whereas, do you remember in Independence Day when the first lasers open up and everyone's like, they're all doing the same thing, like they're all like enamored by the green light, like mosquitoes to a fucking flame. Some people started to run away, I could understand, in Independence Day, but everyone's like, yay, they're going to talk to us. Yeah, just
That's what would really happen.
could be accidental, but it's just a detail that I'm appreciating and giving a shout out. I have two quotes here. The grizzled boat pilot, he says, "This country never changes. I wonder if it can, because the government is lying to them again, trying to hide Godzilla from the population." And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And then he also says, if we don't step up, who will? In a part, I can understand probably why Koreans are like, hey, you're glorifying things because you're trying to become a better person, even though you served in a war and you killed Koreans, Americans, Filipinos, things like that. And it's like as though they forgot who they were just a couple of years ago. But ironically, they're saying this country never changes. And to me, that does kind of signify a change because they're focused on themselves.
Well, it's me. I would see it as if like they're just trying to make a change for themselves because they've lived through that sort of, especially the veteran guy. He's already seen war and he's done all that. He wants to sort of change now and make a positive impact on things instead of doing the same old.
What were the best parts of the movie for you?
I love the chase scene. That really sticks out to me in the sea with the boat and they're throwing the mines at his head or trying to hit him. I really like that. The effects looked really good. The characters' reactions to Godzilla chasing them were genuine and felt real. Godzilla's facial expression and the emotion was there, even though it's not real, but it just looks so good. With the eyes and him following them, there's a real threat of him, like he's going to get them.
Yeah,
and that'll be it.
There's I think it was that scene, but it could also be the final boss scene as well. That it's a reference to Jaws because they were using those flotation devices, but also they were tracking him with the orange, those floaty buoys or whatever they were.
Yeah.
And here they got him with the mines instead. One of my favorite, or one of standout scenes is when the Japanese warship arrives. They're like, "Yay, we're gonna win this." Godzilla fucking just steps on it first, but he steps on it, and you can see all those Japanese men like sliding down, right? And then as he's stepping on the ship, the guns swivel around, and they just blast him in the chest. I just love that moment because those men probably gonna think we're gonna die, but we're gonna try and take this fucker out while we're at it. They get him in the chest as well, like right under the armpit where you're supposed to. And then they're all like, yay, and then he just fucking nukes them from below. It's like, holy shit. And this movie reminds me of a lot of things. That's why I'm bringing up Dumbo. That's why I'm bringing up the Body Snatchers movie and the first Godzilla movie and whatever. This part reminds me of a concept album by Jeff Waynes, and maybe you've heard of it, but I've got it here. It's a War of the Worlds album, and there's that famous dun 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 dun, right? And there's a song called Thunderchild, and it's about this British warship that comes to rescue this boat full of civilians, and they take on the Martians, and there's like 3 of them, and the Thunderchild is like boom boom boom, like twatting them. The music rises so much that the Thunderchild you think is going to win, takes out 2 of them, and then one of them just goes with its laser rays and just like nukes it. It's the same thing here. Like give you false hope.
Yeah, that is a good scene. Yeah, definitely, I like that one.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
I enjoyed where they're all in the meeting room. They're having the scientist guys coming up with a plan to sort of take Godzilla down.
Right.
And they're all having their say. They're all talking. They all have different opinions. And I think the general guy, whatever he is at the time, he just says he needs volunteers basically because we can't make you do this.
Right.
So people volunteer and they go along with the plan, which is actually quite a unique plan I found as well. It's not been done on screen before. It's unique. It's not just like shooting him or blowing him up or something or luring them somewhere with food. It's actually quite an ingenious plan, where it's like it's different. It's using the actual elements around them, so that's different. It's good, using like pressure and sea pressure, real life things that could actually have an effect on him.
In a way, it's a non-militaristic solution, which further exemplifies that it isn't the Japanese government that's in charge, and this is all they've got, because all their ships have had their weapons taken off them, except for that one that got destroyed that they were allowed to have. I like that when I was like, oh, that's a unique way to get rid of Godzilla this time.
I mean, ultimately, you could probably foresee that wasn't going to work, and him using the kamikaze plane was going to come into play. So but then it was still good though. They still executed it, and it was still done. And when he came back up, the damage was still visible on him, which I liked as well. Like you could see like the pressure, the water pressure, fucked him up.
Yeah.
And that was good to see. It's good that they actually showed that as well. It wasn't just like hidden away or didn't have an effect.
Yeah, I agree. But to go back onto that meeting scene, they show people who are like, I'm not doing this. I've had enough. Again, that's an argument against the criticism of this movie, because not everyone is gung-ho. This movie is not sort of patriotic towards the country or the idea of this is Japan's second attempt at winning. It's like their second attempt at surviving. And the fact that you've got people who are basically dissenters means that they don't have confidence. They've got differences of opinion, and it isn't all black and white. There are people who don't want to do what they did again. There is trauma from the war that they are experiencing, because if they all said, yay, let's do it, then it's like, hang on, that could be more insensitive. Or it can be read as more insensitive because it's like they don't take the past few years into consideration.
Yeah, and plus it's too stereotypical as well. It's very westernized to go, yeah, let's all go. Yeah, like Independence Day was.
Right.
Where everyone was like really gung-ho about just taking down the aliens.
Yeah.
Where realistically, there would be people like, no, fuck that, I'm not doing that.
I think there's a solid argument to make that this movie is not like propaganda for whatever Japan did in the war.
No.
If anything, it's a sobering realization that they fucked up. Their government lied to them, and they say their government is lying to them, and they can't trust them, and so they've got to do it themselves. And Japan kind of had to feel the effects of the war in effect anyway, and they had to apart from America helped them, of course. America looked after them for a bit, but look at them now. They're not trying to fight anybody. I think they learned their lesson.
Fucking hell. All it took was a bomb being dropped on them. Yeah, sure.
2 drops of candy. Anything else you want to pick out as the best parts?
Obviously, we've got to talk about the final battle, haven't we? I mean, that's just a given.
Yes, save that. Anything else?
Well, actually, before that, Godzilla goes through the city, completely wrecks it. You see his future sort of wife, the person he cares about. She gets absolutely wiped out, and I thought, oh, she's dead.
Right, yeah, seemingly wiped out, yeah.
I was like, she's dead. She got flung. But then, obviously, spoilers, she is alive at the end of the movie.
Yeah, I have a problem with that scene. It's one of the nitpicks where she pushes him, and it's like, why don't you run into that corridor? Instead, she's just like,
yeah, she could have just shoved them both into that thing, but then she shoved him, and she just basically got flung away.
It's pretty dark when you realise, because I think he was just saying that he can dream again. He was on the up. He was winning. Yeah. It's like that reference I gave you last week about Super Mario, the Super Mario game. He's so enthusiastic at the beginning. It's like, World 1, let's go. And it just dies straight away.
All right, Nintendo, we're going to do this. We're going to play this video game. You and me, Mario, we're going to go find the princess. She's going to be grateful. She's going to give you a kiss. And for next thing you know, you're going to get laid tonight. All right? So let's do this. Okay, let's do this. Let's start this shit up. World 1-1. I'm ready. Okay. And we're going to... What the fuck? There's no floor.
That's where you think, okay, he's over the trauma, and then Godzilla comes and he's like, no, you're not. And it just sets him up to be even more determined, because he can kind of let go at that stage. He's with the kid. He gets the warning. No, he's with the kid, but before he gets the warning, he's at peace with himself, and then he just gets thrown back into it. The group of reporters in that Tokyo scene, they're standing on top of the building, and they're reporting and dramatizing it, right? Yeah. They reminded me, and again, the movie's not doing this, it's just me finding fucking reference to other things. Do you remember in Gremlins 2 when the Gremlins take over the New York skyscraper?
Incredible as it might seem, ladies and gentlemen, after their bizarre, blood-curdling rampage of destruction, these strange creatures now appear to be mounting what seems to be a musical number.
And you've got that Japanese guy
Yeah.
in the fucking duct, the air duct, and he's got the camera, and Dracula's like, oh my god, these little creatures, and they're dramatizing
Yeah.
it. It reminded me of Gremlins 2, except obviously the gremlin is much bigger. They don't want to get out of the way. They're like, oh my god, the classic Odeon theatre, it's been demolished. The building collapses and they slide off.
Yeah, that was a funny scene.
Right.
It was weird that, because I was like, what are they doing? They're just standing there and watching him and reporting it. Yeah, crazy. But then that would probably happen because people are like that even now.
What about the atomic blast that he creates?
Oh man, like, yeah, we haven't talked about Godzilla's different abilities that he seems to have in this. Like, it's a one-time thing that he can only use every so often, like he has to recharge basically, but that thing is devastating. It's like just a nuclear warhead going off. And the effect it does is so visually kind of, pleasing to watch, obviously, because you're watching it, but it's incredible. You feel you get the sense of the actual power and devastation that one move can do, and he unleashes it when he really needs to. Yeah, it's such a cool thing that they added.
When have you ever seen something charge up and it was good for the people in the movie?
Yeah, like the one in Godzilla
Get away.
versus Kong was crap.
No,
like he had the weird,
yeah.
stupid spike things, and then it was like a generic blue beam that
Yeah.
came out. You didn't care. It was like, eh.
Yeah, but then they made it purple to make it more powerful.
Yes.
But
Or
what I mean is,
more woke.
when the people standing around watching something charge up, when is it ever good? I don't mean in the
yeah.
visual quality of it, the visual depiction, but it's like it's never a good thing. So if a movie has taught me anything, if you ever see anything charging or ticking down, then run from it.
We're like moths, aren't we? We just look at it and like,
Yeah, that's
can't
true,
help
that's
it.
true.
We can't help it.
But the scientist guy, when he figures out that Godzilla has to recharge and it takes time, I'm like, you didn't know that. You're just saying that, and you're just
Yeah.
assuming that he just takes it. He has to take a break. You're just assuming it. So when he's
Yeah,
on the
it
ship
feels like he is
explaining,
just surmising it. Yeah.
yeah, he's making a logical leap that Star Trek Picard did a lot of. So they did one, and I'm like, okay, I'll allow it. But if I have to nitpick with that scene, even though it's a great scene, I actually don't like the blue charging up. And they could have saved some money and put it somewhere else with regards to the limited budget they had. But the idea that the lizard could turn specific scales blue, not only blue, but then they stick out as well. Hey, that's a nitpick, and otherwise, what should be a 5 out of 5 movie. Before we turn to the fight scene, the last fight scene, I want to talk about the music. I deliberately sent you some tracks because I think there are 3 standout tracks.
Yeah.
One, and the names aren't really that over-explanatory, so we'll have to explain them for anyone who's interested. But there's one called Godzilla Suite 1. You can find it on YouTube. And it's the one with the dun, dun, dun. Think about when he attacks the train and you see him walking. That song is from the original movies.
Okay.
And when that kicked in, I remembered having watched those original movies because I've heard that song before.
Okay. I wouldn't have known. I haven't seen.
Right, there's a
lot
famous composer and they used it. Obviously, they've got the rights to it. The second track is called Pain, and it's the eerie music that plays mostly at the beginning, that sort of gentle screaming that raises the tension. And the last track is called Resolution, and that's the one that shows Koichi in the plane fighting back, which is the one that's like, yeah, we're pumped, let's do this.
It went well with each scene, the atmosphere. It created a lot of like atmospheric moments for the actual different scenes that were needed. It built up the tension sort of like in certain places.
Yeah, it matches, it fits with, like I say, you've got Godzilla Suite 1 for Godzilla's intro, that's his theme song.
Yeah.
Then you've got Pain, which they keep playing, and then you've got Resolution, which is more upbeat, and it fits perfectly with what's going on in the scenes. They run tandem to each other. And we're now going to talk about the final big boss fight. What was your takeaway from the whole setup of it? We talked about the plan, but the execution, what did you think?
I liked it. You got a sense where they panned out and you saw like the location, and then you saw like all the people involved, the ships involved. You knew the plan was pretty simple as well, so you got a sense of like it wasn't overcomplicated, so it was very easy to follow. Everybody had their own like role to play in the actual plan. They knew that the lead guy was off getting his plane modified, so he'd be around at some point to sort of lead Godzilla to the ocean basically. Yeah, it worked really well. Like the way it was set, the way it looked, Godzilla being sort of hounded by like a pesky fly, and he was just like, he needs to go chase it. That was quite good, because this is like, it's like it's like a creature. Right? You keep calling him like Godzilla, like he's Godzilla, but you always refer to him as it's him. But in some stages, you kind of, in other films, in westernized films, you sort of almost root for Godzilla, think of him as a character. You can sort of sometimes get behind some of the motivations he does, but in this, He is just a force of nature and just a thing that you need to try and take care of or neutralize. You're not rooting for him, you're kind of against him.
Yeah.
Which is the good thing the movie does. Most of the movies that we've watched with Godzilla in, you're kind of like on his side. The same with Jaws or any horror film. You sort of root for the evil fucking slasher, instead of the actual teenagers, because you don't give a crap about them. Here, you've got characters that you care about, and you want them to succeed, you want them to win.
Yeah.
So you want the plan to go right. You don't want it to go wrong because there's a lot of shit on the line.
There's nothing else
So-
is going to work.
Yeah, so it works really well, and I like the whole thing as it played out.
King Kong, by the way, was literally on Godzilla's side, riding him.
Oh, it's so embarrassing.
The scene where they explain the plan, and you said then they execute the plan. They don't tell you everything though, because when Godzilla charges up his first atomic blast, they've got decoy ships, and you're made to think that those ships are going to be part of it. Actually, they only need 2.
Yeah.
There's a clever twist to
Yeah, one was unmanned, wasn't it, or something? It was.
that there's like 4 unmanned.
Yeah.
And it kicks off, the actual scene, let's go back a little bit, sorry. The actual scene kicks off when that ship goes flying through the air. They're like, what?
Imagine you're getting ready for probably the biggest moment in your life, and then a ship just gets launched, and you see it, and you're like, this is a good start. This is a good start to our plan.
Yeah, that was the decoy ship. Oh, not decoy ship, that was the ship with the speakers. This isn't another
It's like
Godzilla.
it's like he's found it and he's gone, you fucking...
Wasting my time. They obviously lure Godzilla out into the ocean. And I'm actually wondering, like, why does he care about a little fighter jet? Something, it just be like, it must be like, shiny, like mosquitoes to a flame again. It's like, I've got to get rid of this little thing that's flying around. I need to get rid of that. But this village and this farm and his plantations, that can wait. Because that's where he was. He was just destroying one farm. I could understand if it was Tokyo again. He went back for a second bout, but it's just a guy's farm. Poor bastard.
Yeah, his motivations were not, he was just like, he just wanted to smash stuff. It was great.
That jet is based on real plans, so that jet is actually historically accurate. They were building those things during the war. They just didn't have enough of them in order to
I was
put them out there.
wondering, because it didn't seem like it was aerodynamically fit for flight. Do you know what I mean? It looked very odd.
Looked like it was like flying backwards.
Because it didn't have a back bit, did it? I can't remember. It was like...
You mean a tail wing?
It was a very strange design. It was a very strange design.
Back bit, bomb thingies.
Yeah. I don't have to explain myself. I'm not a fucking engineer, dude.
No, I'm only playing. It's okay.
People know what I mean. Back bit of a plane, the phalange.
When the ships, they throw Godzilla down. I like the fact that Godzilla's like this, and then he gets sucked down, right? I like that. When they bring him back up, and somehow he's stuck, which I didn't understand, because they've got to get him all the way back up, and he's there for a long time at this midpoint. So I'm thinking surely he's regenerated against some of that damage he's taken. But the ship crane breaks, and I'm thinking, shouldn't that have snapped off? If the pressure can take off the crane, then surely the cable can snap or something.
Yeah.
And then when the young guy brings the flotilla, which is like a Dunkirk-esque kind of scene, and they attach all the little ships to the big ship, I'm thinking, how much time did that take?
I know, I did think that they did skip ahead a little bit, all conveniently like attached to the bigger ship. That was quick.
Yeah, what's Godzilla doing? And then you're still pulling the 2 ships that have got their dismantled cranes anyway. So what are you pulling against?
Yeah.
So I'll let it fly.
Certain things of like, you have to like, kind of look past, but...
And then Koichi is there with the plane, flies it into his mouth. When he does it, it's like very sudden. It's like a very sudden jump, because he seems to be far away, and then next minute he's in the mouth. It's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
And it's so quick. On the second watch, I can see the parachute, the ejection mechanism.
Yeah.
But on the first, you don't. And everyone's like, fuck, he's dead.
Did you know already? I mean, I've sort of figured that the guy had installed an ejector seat whilst watching it.
Yes, because they're still talking, and the camera pans away, and you don't hear what they're saying. So they're making it available to you as a possible thing. But that jump cut, I think, is there to make you forget about what they've set up. And you're like, fuck, he's dead. Because it happened so quickly. Yeah, so I did think he died the first time. But the second time I watched the movie, I didn't think he died. I knew he was going to live. Because I'm clever. I'm clever like that. I like the fact that he breaks apart like rock candy.
Yeah, he just explodes.
Right? He's calcified in a way while exploding.
Yeah, it's really weird. Yeah, it's really weird how he dies. But then, obviously, like most good horror icons, he's alive at the end. It's a little part of him.
Okay, you're jumping ahead, which is fine. So
I know.
No, it's fine. It's
We're
fine.
done with the scene.
But did you not think that underplayed the effort? Undermined the effort of what they tried to do, because you're like, oh, so he's not dead, and yeah, it took a lot to fucking kill him. I would have been happy with that scene omitted, and you just have another one. It's like, how did that happen?
I suppose, but then they don't know enough about the physiology of the actual thing itself. It's a massive creature, and they just kind of figured that he died. Whereas a real kind of government agency or whatever would probably search around the area to make sure that he's fully dead. You know what I mean? Like with like debris and bits of carcass or whatever. You doubly make sure that that thing was definitely dead.
I mean, in the Tokyo Blast, they do talk about skin cells like the government collected, so they must have been like, we're going to see if there's any traces of him that are left over.
Yeah.
Has to be like that.
And then, you know, his future wife does the same thing. She is also alive. she had a bandage, that was it.
Just a head wound. I'm just thinking about the Japanese government again. I do think they would have searched the area. Some of them might have been like, we can't take it as a given, but they don't show that. But then the question is, when does Godzilla reappear? Because if you use the same characters again, you have to create a new justification, because it erases what they've done this time. So does that mean Koichi will think, oh, I'm not finished yet, I've got to do it again? Does he take center stage again? Or does he lead from the back? You know, well, it raises all these odd questions because their character arcs are finished.
I mean, they've obviously put that scene in there because they're thinking about the potential of a sequel. How can they do it well is the other fucking thing. And then, like you say, what are the characters' motivations going to be? How are they going to act? Are they going to be different?
Or maybe it's just a reference to old movies where the evil creature will just come back and they actually don't make a sequel. There's not a given that they will anyway. They don't have to.
Yeah.
It's a finished story.
Yeah, it is. But because of how successful this movie is, they probably will, I'm assuming.
We'll have to wait and see.
Again, though, it's not like a Western. It's not like a Western type of movie, so they might not. They might go, no, one and done.
I'll be happy with that. I'm perfectly happy.
Yeah.
But going back onto the idea that the Japanese over-emote, when Godzilla's charging up his second atomic blast, everyone takes their hats off on the boat. Why are you doing that? Yeah, they're like,
oh, yeah.
And they're sort of like,
oh, yeah.
Oh, hold your breath, we're all going to die. Yeah, it's just weird. I would not be thinking about my hat in that moment. I'd be jumping overboard.
Yeah, something, I don't know, I'll probably just accept death at that point.
I'd be trying to get to the chopper, as Arnold Schwarzenegger once said. Again, it's just a little nitpick, but if I nitpick this movie too much, I won't say it's a 5 out of 5.
No, obviously there's going to be issues and things that we will poke holes at, because obviously you kind of do sit back and overanalyze things, but when you're watching this movie for what it is and how well it's done things, like with its characters, the way like the set designs, the way Godzilla looked, the music, you can sort of like get past the little nitpicky sort of things where you think, it all works really well.
Maybe I shouldn't watch a movie more than 2 times. But I did say to you I wanted to watch this in black and white, and I still could never find a black and white version of this. And I was thinking of desaturating my monitor just to get a sort of facsimile of what the director intended.
Yeah.
Because he says
Did you do?
he edited it in such a way that it could be just another movie in its own right, because they had to change certain things where there was a painstaking process where you effectively got 2 movies.
And by the way, this movie took a long time to come out on the stream.
Yes.
Was there a reason for that? Like, what was going on with that?
I have no idea.
Yeah, it took a hell of a long time, because it was sort of like in the cinemas for a little bit, and then it was gone, because I was going to go watch it there, but then it was gone. And then it just was not coming out for freaking ages.
I've got a couple of things to add, which are technically some interesting facts, by the way. Not 7 of them. The Japanese girl that's always crying. She is the reason why, if I was asked to go back in time and kill Hitler, I could not do it, because she's so pure. Every child is pure, even the Hitler child. I would not go back in time.
Even Hitler child.
Even Hitler. He's not vegetarian yet. He's not an artist. And so he isn't spiteful. He isn't that progressive woke monster that we know him to be. So there's still a chance I would never go back in time. I'd probably just steer him away, take him on a different path in life. But that little girl was actually supposed to be a little boy, and they changed it because of how good she was in being able to act on command.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. And the other one, which is not about this movie, but I just thought it'd be interesting because it's Star Trek related. George Takei did the voiceover for the characters in the English dubbing of the first few movies, the first few Godzilla movies, way back in the 50s.
Oh, wow.
So to bring this back full circle to the beginning when you said you watched the dub, George Takei did it before he was on Star Trek.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Check that shit out. He can speak American. I listened to a podcast recently about him talking about his dubbing, and he could translate properly certain things, and he could do it improperly as well, because there were some things where he's like, I don't know what they're doing, so I'm just gonna make it up, and he gets away with it.
Okay.
But his perspective
Alright.
is really interesting on the production process of those earlier movies. But I just thought I'd share that with
Yeah.
you and anybody else who's watching this and has an interest in Star Trek as much as we do. There we go. It's all related. I don't really have anything else to say. I think we both enjoyed it. We've explained why it's so good. So
Yeah, I think the general thing is that everyone thinks it's good. So.
it's really difficult to wrap up a review when everyone agrees with you.
It is.
Except for those
we don't have
Koreans.
anything negative to say. Normally we have negative stuff to say, at least a little bit, but there's been nothing here. It's been refreshing.
Yeah, cool. As I said, this will come out on both my YouTube channels. I want to make it relevant to both channels. And everybody else, if you didn't know, there'll be a link somewhere. If you didn't know I have another channel, then you can go to that as well. So Adam, thank you for your time once again, and we'll
Yes.
see you next time. Or you'll see us next time. Bye.
We will.